Miyamoto Musashi remains one of history's most legendary swordsmen, undefeated through more than 60 duels in 17th-century Japan. His mastery wasn't merely technical skill but an unshakable psychological composure that allowed him to face mortal combat with the serenity of still water. Born in 1584 during Japan's Warring States period, Musashi cultivated his mental discipline through decades of practice, near-death experiences, and deep reflection. His insights, crystallized in The Book of Five Rings, written in 1645 while living as a hermit, reveal a sophisticated understanding of conflict psychology that remains startlingly relevant today. Whether facing corporate negotiations, personal confrontations, competitive challenges, or daily stresses, Musashi's principles offer a timeless framework for maintaining composure under pressure. Musashi's first secret begins with fundamentally reframing conflict itself. Rather than viewing confrontation as chaos to be feared, he described it as a natural rhythm to be understood and harmonized with. He wrote of the rhythm of the void, the underlying pattern governing all conflict. This perspective immediately strips away the emotional charge that typically accompanies confrontation. Most people experience disagreement physiologically: racing heart, sweating palms, scattered thoughts. This evolutionary response treats every conflict as life or death. Musashi recognized that this reaction becomes the primary obstacle to effective action. By reconceptualizing conflict as rhythm rather than catastrophe, he created psychological distance from immediate threat. When Musashi faced opponents, he observed patterns: breathing, tension, movement cadence. He perceived conflict as a dance with discoverable steps rather than unpredictable violence. This mental framework allowed analytical clarity when others became reactive. For modern practitioners, this translates to viewing conflicts as problems to solve rather than threats to survive. A difficult conversation becomes a puzzle of communication and timing. A competitive negotiation transforms into strategic engagement. This cognitive reframing alone dramatically reduces the stress response that clouds judgment. The foundation: Hijishin, everyday mind. Central to Musashi's philosophy is Hijishin, everyday mind or ordinary mind. This principle holds that the mental state appropriate for deadly combat is identical to the state appropriate for brewing tea or walking in a garden. There should be no special combat mentality adopted under pressure. The mind that sweeps the floor is the mind that faces the sword. This directly challenges conventional performance psychology, which emphasizes getting psyched up or entering heightened states. Musashi taught the opposite: cultivate a baseline state of relaxed awareness, then maintain it regardless of external circumstances. Developing Hijishin requires first becoming intimately familiar with your calm, centered state through meditation and self-observation. Musashi spent hours in seated meditation, not seeking mystical experiences but understanding his own consciousness in its most settled form. Second, it demands intentionally maintaining this quality during progressively challenging circumstances. Through practice, the settled state becomes your default, accessible even in extremis. Contemporary application involves maintaining conscious breath awareness during difficult conversations, or deliberately relaxing shoulders and jaw when tension arises during stress. The goal isn't suppressing emotions, but recognizing you can choose to maintain your center regardless of what emotions surface. Physical mastery as mental foundation. Musashi understood that mental composure cannot be separated from physical state. His concept of fudoshin, immovable mind, was inseparable from fudo-tai, immovable body. An agitated, tense, or weak body inevitably produces an agitated mind. Conversely, a body that is strong, flexible, and relaxed supports mental equilibrium. Modern neuroscience confirms this wisdom. The vagus nerve, regulating the parasympathetic nervous system responsible for the rest and digest state, is directly influenced by posture, breathing, and physical tension. You literally cannot maintain calm cognition while holding chronic muscular tension or breathing shallowly. Breathing as the master switch. Musashi gave particular emphasis to breath control as a practical tool for regulating mental state. He taught specific breathing patterns: deep, slow breaths before engagement to achieve calm, controlled breathing during action to maintain oxygen flow, recovery breathing after intense exertion. Breath serves as a bridge between conscious and unconscious processes. Unlike heart rate, breathing can be consciously controlled while also operating automatically. This makes it the ideal tool for voluntarily influencing autonomic state. When facing opponents, Musashi would deliberately slow and deepen his breathing, triggering a parasympathetic response that counteracts fight or flight activation. This physiological calm then supports psychological calm. The mind trusts the body's assessment. If we're breathing this calmly, the situation cannot be truly life-threatening. He also taught tanden breathing, breathing deeply into the lower abdomen rather than shallowly into the chest. This maximizes oxygen exchange while activating the diaphragm, which connects to the vagus nerve and thus the body's relaxation response. In practical terms, spend 2 minutes before difficult meetings breathing slowly, 4-count inhale, 4-count exhale, while focusing on filling the lower belly. During stressful moments, simply noticing your breath and making it slightly deeper can dramatically shift your psychological state. Multiple strategies, never rigid. Musashi was adamant that rigidity leads to defeat. He studied multiple sword schools but refused to be bound by any single style. His famous two-sword technique represented his refusal to depend on any single approach. This flexibility is fundamental to maintaining calm because anxiety often stems from lack of options. When you have only one way to respond, that pathway becomes critical and stress-inducing. When you possess multiple viable strategies, no single approach carries overwhelming importance. Before important confrontations, Musashi would mentally rehearse not just his primary strategy but numerous alternatives and contingencies. If Plan A failed, he already knew Plans B, C, and D. Research on stress and control validates this approach. Studies show that perceived control, believing you have options and agency, dramatically reduces stress responses even in genuinely difficult circumstances. Musashi's insistence on multiple strategic options ensured psychological control. Practically, never enter important conflicts without considering multiple approaches. What if they respond with anger? What if they refuse? By pre-thinking scenarios, you transform the unknown, which produces anxiety, into the anticipated, which permits composure. Seize initiative without attachment. Musashi taught the principle of sen no sen, attacking before the opponent completes their attack, preempting their intention. However, he coupled this aggressive principle with profound non-attachment to outcomes. He would seize initiative decisively but remain inwardly flexible about how events unfolded. This combination seems paradoxical but represents sophisticated psychology. Decisiveness prevents anxious paralysis from overthinking. Non-attachment prevents brittle anxiety from needing things to go a particular way. Together, they create dynamic equilibrium. Decisive action combined with psychological flexibility. The calm this produces is the calm of flow state. You're fully engaged, acting decisively, but not clutching at outcomes. When a strategy fails, you adapt fluidly rather than desperately forcing it to work. For modern practitioners, this means taking initiative in conflicts, raising the difficult topic, making the first offer, setting the discussion frame, while remaining completely flexible about how things develop. You're not passive, but you're also not rigidly attached to specific outcomes. This balance produces calm activity rather than anxious reaction. Understanding Hyoshi. Musashi devoted extensive attention to Hyoshi, rhythm or timing, arguing that mastery of rhythm was more important than mastery of technique. He identified numerous rhythms in combat: the opponent's attack rhythm, your own movement rhythm, environmental rhythm, and the rhythm of the interval between actions. The connection to psychological calm is profound. Anxiety often manifests as internal temporal chaos, racing thoughts, inability to be present, catastrophic future projections. By training to perceive and harmonize with external rhythms, you externalize attention and achieve present-moment awareness that displaces anxiety. Musashi practiced identifying rhythm in everything: listening to rain patterns, watching birds in flight, observing craftsmen working. This constant practice developed his ability to quickly perceive rhythm in any situation, including combat. When facing opponents, he would first identify their rhythm: breathing, footwork tempo, movement spacing. Once he understood their rhythm, he could disrupt it, align with it, or deliberately contrast it. The psychological benefit is that focusing on rhythm prevents overthinking. You can't simultaneously catastrophize about potential outcomes and carefully attend to rhythm. Rhythm awareness pulls you into present-moment processing, which is inherently calmer than abstract worry. In modern contexts, this means attending to conversation rhythm, speech pacing, intervals between exchanges, interaction tempo. By noticing and consciously working with these rhythms, you remain grounded in present reality rather than spiraling into anxious abstraction. Recognizing gaps, Suki. Related to rhythm is Musashi's teaching about Suki, gaps or openings. He taught that every action creates gaps, moments of vulnerability or opportunity. These gaps appear not just in physical positioning but in attention, intention, and commitment. Understanding gaps reduces the pressure of continuous confrontation. Not every moment is equally critical. There are peaks and valleys, moments of intensity and respite. Understanding this prevents the exhausting error of treating every second as maximally threatening. By cultivating awareness of these gaps, Musashi could relax slightly during moments when attack wasn't imminent, conserving energy and maintaining calm. In modern conflicts, recognize that not every moment is equally crucial. Between intense exchanges are transitions, pauses, procedural moments where pressure lessens. Recognizing these gaps allows you to modulate intensity rather than exhausting yourself through sustained maximum alertness. Furthermore, understanding that you can create gaps through strategic pauses, requests for breaks, or topic shifts gives you control over intensity level. This control itself produces calm. Training in the shadow of mortality. Perhaps Musashi's most profound secret for maintaining calm was his complete acceptance of death. He didn't merely acknowledge mortality intellectually, he psychologically incorporated it into every moment. His philosophy held that a warrior must consider himself already dead before entering combat. With nothing left to protect, fear loses its foundation. This isn't nihilism or death-seeking. It's radical acceptance that produces ultimate freedom. When you're not protecting a self that must survive, you can act with complete clarity and commitment. The anxious self-preservation instinct that clouds judgment doesn't activate. Musashi practiced this acceptance through meditation on death, deliberately contemplating mortality, and maintaining awareness of life's fragility. The psychological mechanism is profound. Most anxiety is ultimately fear of death or its proxies, loss of status, love, security. By making peace with mortality itself, you undermine the foundation of derivative anxieties. This philosophy aligns with various wisdom traditions. Buddhism teaches contemplation of death as a path to freedom. Stoicism emphasizes memento mori, remember you will die. Modern existential psychology recognizes that accepting mortality paradoxically enhances life engagement. For contemporary application, this doesn't require morbid preoccupation but honest acknowledgement. What's the absolute worst outcome of this conflict? Can you accept even that possibility? When you genuinely can, the conflict loses its existential weight and becomes merely a situation to navigate skillfully. The freedom of non-attachment. Closely related to accepting mortality is Musashi's principle of non-attachment to outcomes. He would enter duels with no particular need to win, though he always fought with complete commitment. He was completely committed to fighting excellently but not attached to the ego gratification of victory. This non-attachment directly produces calm. Attachment creates anxiety by making external events critical to internal well-being. When your peace of mind depends on specific outcomes, you've surrendered your equanimity to circumstances beyond complete control. When your peace of mind is independent of outcomes, you're invulnerable to circumstances. Musashi cultivated this through practices that separated action from outcome. He would practice sword techniques without opponents, focusing purely on movement quality rather than defeating anyone. This trained his mind to find satisfaction in skillful action itself rather than victory. In modern terms, this means finding fulfillment in how you handle conflicts rather than whether you get your preferred outcome. Did you remain centered? Did you communicate clearly? Did you act with integrity? These process-oriented questions keep you focused on what you control, your conduct, rather than what you partially control, outcomes. The corporate warrior. The modern workplace presents conflicts that, while not life-threatening, can feel overwhelming. High-stakes negotiations, difficult conversations, competitive presentations, office politics. Musashi's principles translate remarkably well. Pre-meeting preparation. Days before critical negotiations, study not just your position but the rhythm and patterns of your counterparts. How do they typically negotiate? What are their visible tells? This intelligence gathering reduces uncertainty. The night before, practice multiple strategic approaches. Mentally rehearse not just success but challenging scenarios. Physical preparation. The morning of the negotiation, engage in physical practice, exercise, stretching, or martial arts. 30 minutes before the meeting, find a private space and practice tanden breathing. Slow, deep breaths into the lower abdomen for 5 minutes. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, creating physiological calm. During engagement, maintain hydration, ordinary mind. You're not in battle, you're having a conversation about mutual interests. Use broad awareness while maintaining focus on specific points. Notice body language, environmental factors, and your own internal state while focusing on discussion content. Strategic execution. Control the frame and space. If possible, choose the location or arrive early. Establish conversation rhythm. When to speak, when to pause strategically, when to introduce new topics. Remember gaps. Not every moment requires maximum intensity. Relationship conflicts. Perhaps the most challenging conflicts are those with people we love. Here, emotional stakes run higher, and psychological vulnerabilities are more exposed. Yet Musashi's principles remain applicable. Reframing. Rather than viewing this as a relationship threat or an opportunity to win, see it as a shared problem-solving session. You and your loved one are not opponents but collaborators navigating difficulty. This reframe immediately reduces adversarial tension. Timing. Choose when to raise difficult topics rather than reacting impulsively. Initiate important conversations when both parties are relatively calm, well-rested, and have adequate time. Recognize the rhythm of discussion. When to press a point, when to pause, when to take a break. Physical regulation. During emotionally charged discussions, notice physical distress signals, elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, muscle tension. Rather than ignoring these or being controlled by them, use conscious physical regulation. Deliberately slow your breathing, release jaw and shoulder tension, and ground awareness in physical sensation. True listening. Practice listening as you would practice a martial art, with complete focus, setting aside internal commentary, genuinely trying to understand the other person's perspective. This paradoxically protects your calm while making you more effective. Musashi's ultimate teaching was ichijyo zamai, total absorption in present action without distraction. Every task, from drawing water to facing death, deserved complete attention. This constant practice of presence was the integration of all his teachings. Anxiety exists in mental departure from present reality, worrying about future possibilities or ruminating on past events. The present moment, fully inhabited, contains no anxiety, only what is. Musashi would practice complete presence during mundane activities precisely because mundanity offers less obvious motivation for attention. Morning ritual. Begin each day with a sequence that prepares you for skillful engagement. Meditation, 10 to 30 minutes, physical practice, and intention setting. This creates psychological momentum that carries through the day. Mindful intervals. Throughout the day, take brief moments to return to center. 3 conscious breaths between meetings. A minute of stillness before a difficult phone call. These brief practices maintain connection to the centered state cultivated in formal practice. Evening review. End each day with reflection. What went well? Where did you lose your center, and what triggered that? What did you learn? This reflection prevents unconscious repetition of patterns and ensures continuous development. Miyamoto Musashi died on June 13, 1645, seated in meditation, having completed the Book of 5 Rings just weeks before. According to accounts, he faced death with the same composure he'd brought to combat, neither seeking it nor resisting it, simply meeting the moment with complete presence. The way he described doesn't end with completion of training. It's endless, not in the sense of futile but inexhaustible. There's always deeper composure available, always greater clarity possible, always more refined capacity to meet challenges with grace. The ultimate secret to Musashi's calm wasn't a trick or technique but a commitment, the decision to make the cultivation of composure his life's central purpose. He didn't practice martial arts and happened to develop composure. He practiced composure through the medium of martial arts. Your tools may differ. Your conflicts may be corporate rather than martial, relational rather than physical, internal rather than external. But the work remains the same. The systematic cultivation of equanimity, presence, strategic clarity, and non-attached engagement. This is Musashi's gift, not a set of techniques for staying calm but a vision of what humans can become through dedicated practice. Someone who has so thoroughly trained mind, body, and spirit that calm is not something they achieve but something they are. The path is clear. Sit in meditation daily, train your body skillfully, study strategy intelligently, face challenges courageously, reflect on experiences honestly, and continue this practice not for a season but for a lifetime. Not with grim determination but with the spirit you'd bring to creating art, seriously but not heavily, dedicated but not rigid. As Musashi wrote, there is nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, richer, quicker, or smarter. Everything is within. Everything exists. Seek nothing outside of yourself. The calm you seek isn't somewhere out there, to be found in perfect circumstances or special knowledge. It's developed through daily practice of cultivating your own capacities. It's forged in the crucible of actual challenges, met skillfully. It emerges gradually, through accumulated small victories and integrated lessons, until one day you realize the storm rages around you but within you, there is stillness. This is the way of the warrior. This is Musashi's legacy. And it remains as accessible now as it was in 17th century Japan. Not easy, but clear. The path is before you. The only question is whether you'll walk it.